Hello and welcome to another edition of North Coast History and Haunts. This video marks the first in a new series dedicated to one of the most famous amusement parks in the world, Cedar Point. Throughout this series, we'll explore the history of Cedar Point, share the stories about the land, people connected to it, and of course, the rides that help it earn the title of America's Roller Coast. In today's episode, we're taking a closer look at one of the park's oldest and most historic landmarks, the Cedar Point Lighthouse. As we walk along this pier extending out into Lake Erie, we're facing west, looking across the water towards the Sandusky Bay. Now, if we look at this map, you'll see that we're standing right here at the northwestern tip of Cedar Point, and just across the bay from us sits Johnson's Island. It's not an island for people with last name of Johnsons, but instead, during the Civil War, Johnson's Island was a home to a Union prison camp. Originally built to house Confederate officers, it soon held virtually any Confederate enemy captured by Union forces. Over its 3 years of operation, more than 15,000 prisoners passed through Johnson's Island. To guard against escapees or possible Confederate rescue attempts, Union artillery cannons were placed very close to where we're standing right now, aimed directly at the island. There were at least 15 known escapees during the time that Johnson's Island was active, and many more attempts were made, including walking across the frozen ice of Lake Erie during the winter months over to Canada, the mainland, or here to Cedar Point. One man deeply connected to the Johnson's Island story was this guy, Louis Zistel. He was a German immigrant hired to transport prisoners from downtown Sandusky out to Johnson's Island. When the war ended, Zistel used those very same steamboats to transport the first visitors over to Cedar Point, which at that time was really just a dance hall and beer garden, and it helped lay the foundation for what the peninsula would eventually become. Before Cedar Point ever became an amusement park, Sandusky was already growing into an important shipping and industrial hub. In the early 1800s, increasing boat traffic brought immigrants and commerce to the area, making navigation across Lake Erie more critical than ever. In response, Congress appropriated $5,500 for the construction of a lighthouse at Cedar Point. Completed in 1839, the Cedar Point Lighthouse, along with the nearby Marblehead Lighthouse, helped mariners safely navigate the sometimes dark, treacherous waters of Lake Erie. Additional navigation lights were added in 1853, including this front range light. Lighthouse keepers lived on site here from March through December, very isolated from the mainland. If trouble arose, the lighthouse keeper would have to row across the bay to Marblehead for help, a dangerous and exhausting journey, especially during the wicked Lake Erie storms. During Prohibition, Sandusky Bay gained a reputation for a very different reason. Thanks to its close proximity to the Canadian islands and the natural cover they provided, the bay became a hotspot for bootlegging activity. Fast boats raced across the water at night, often running without lights as they collected their illegal cargo, jokingly referred to it as midnight herring, and then rushed back to their drop points, all the while evading law enforcement. Newspaper articles from the time described complaints from the lighthouse keepers who claimed that bootleggers would sometimes shoot out the lighthouse lights, attempting to confuse and slow the pursuing Coast Guard boats. The boats used for these runs were often outfitted with surplus aircraft engines, making them incredibly fast and powerful, capable of outrunning most Coast Guard vessels of the time. There's a rumor that one of these boats was sunk just off this point and is still there today, loaded with bottles of illegal Canadian whiskey. As we turn around now and walk back toward the park, it's hard to imagine what Cedar Point once looked like before the rides, buildings, cars, or crowds. Originally, Cedar Point was nothing more than a remote peninsula covered in cedar trees and surrounded by wildlife. Native American tribes used the area for fishing and hunting, but it remained largely uninhabited due to how difficult it was to access. Today, the Cedar Point Lighthouse is part of the Lighthouse Point Campground, a popular destination for visitors looking to stay close to the park while enjoying a piece of its history. The lighthouse we see today was originally built in 1839 and then rebuilt in 1867. It was constructed from local limestone, and it is the oldest structure still standing at Cedar Point today. The original light was transferred to the new structure when the building was rebuilt, and it had to be maintained daily using a rope and pulley system. The lights had to be refilled with the oil that would power the lamps that shine through the lens. The first lighthouse was a small rectangular stone dwelling with stuccoed walls and distinctive sawtooth-style Dutch gables. A short octagonal light tower rose from the peak of the roof, giving the structure a total of height of just 28 feet. When the lighthouse was rebuilt in 1867, it was constructed of cut limestone with a square wooden light tower centered on the roof, now standing 10 feet taller to improve visibility out over the lake. Both range lights were discontinued on March 31st, 1904, rendered unnecessary by channel improvements and newer navigation lights leading into the Sandusky Harbor. The light tower was later removed from the roof of the main dwelling. The front range light was destroyed by fire, likely arson, on July 5th, 1910. At the time, it was being used as a storage shed. Even after the lights were extinguished, the original lighthouse site remained active. The Lighthouse Service, and later the Coast Guard, used the property as a buoy depot, a radio beacon station, and eventually a search and rescue boat station. That station finally closed in 1975, with responsibilities transferred to the Marblehead Coast Guard Station across the bay. The property sat unused until 1987, when it was acquired by Cedar Point. There were initial plans to demolish the old lighthouse, but cooler heads prevailed and the structure was preserved, upgraded, and rehabilitated. Although it's not open to the public today, the lighthouse remains the centerpiece of the beautiful Lighthouse Point campground, a silent reminder of Cedar Point's long and fascinating past. Well, that's our episode for today. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more Cedar Point videos, and if you like this episode, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and check out my other Cedar Point content coming soon.